beloved Count Olaf.
Welcome back to another video, and in this one we are doing Promarker art again. Found a little bit more time and I decided to do Count Olaf from a series of unfortunate events. The Netflix original series kind of came out, and as much as I love that, and it's been a great little series that Netflix have done, I still much prefer the film with Jim Carrey as Count Olaf, because he just does such a brilliant job. And so this is kind of just me doing him here with the markers. So I use a mix of my Promarkers and Copics. I used to just use Promarkers, but ever since I was gifted from a design student all these Copics, I kind of do a mix of them just because it makes it a bit easier if I've not got the certain colours. And also Copic colours and Promarker colours, although they look like the same colour or they're named the same thing, i.e. a warm grey 5, they are completely different, and I have to kind of like mix and match, which is a really good thing. Yes, so as you can see, I've done my grid method, which there is a tutorial for, a very simple tutorial, and a lot of people probably know how to do it. I learnt it when I was doing my GCSEs, and yes, so basically I started off with the background. I always do the background first in most of these, and for some reason it always tends to be green. I don't know why. But anyway, in the top left corner you can see the picture I'm working off, and basically I find these a little bit more difficult than they used to be. Back when I did my first ever video on this channel, which was my Daryl Dixon, Norman Reedus Promarker art, I have always used the colour Light Fawn by Letraset Flex Marker, but ever since Winsor & Newton took over the brand, I cannot seem to find a colour that matches that. So if anyone knows of a colour that matches Light Fawn, it's like a perfect yellowy but orange skin tone. I don't know, I just can't seem to find the light that, and it's a great light tone. Anyway, so I have to kind of like makeshift some colours using my old Letrasets, my new Winsor & Newton Promarkers, and also my Copics. So for this I actually used my satin colour Promarker as the lightest tone, and then mixed into that a mix of kind of nutmeg, which is a flex marker, nutmeg and saddle brown, just to create the dark tones, and also blush, almond and putty to add a bit more pink into the skin tone. Along with this, for the shadowing, I actually use my warm grey Copic markers. So I think I've got a mix of from warm grey 1, 3, 6, 7 and 9, I think. Yes, so 9 being my darkest warm grey. And I just build these up, and it's just about layering it and layering it and layering it. The problem with me is, with my gridding method to help me get perspective of the character when I'm drawing them, I find that the pencil actually gets caught in the kind of grain of the canvas paper, which can sometimes be a little bit annoying, because it takes me a lot of alcohol ink from the markers just to try and get that out, and also the pencil can smudge. And in some aspects I like that, and I do press on hard when I'm drawing a character in certain areas, like his wrinkle on his head, because the pencil actually sits there a bit better. It doesn't get rubbed off quite as easily via the alcohol, and so I actually add that in there to smudge in a darker shade that's not going to be taken off as easily when I'm covering with the lightest colour. But in some aspects it can be really annoying, especially when there's the grids, because you can for a while see the grid through the character no matter how much colouring I'm doing, and it can be a little bit annoying, but in the end it always works out, so it's not too bad. Yeah, so basically I did the whole face, and then I worked feature by feature, adding the layers in. So I did the nose first, the upper lip slightly, and then I started on his his left eye, but the right eye that we're looking at. Just again adding up the layers and smoothing out darker shades with my lighter satin colour. And what I will say is, and I say this every time I do a marker video, working on canvas paper is just amazing. I've worked on Bristol board, I've worked on other smooth marker papers, and as much as I like them because they're amazing for blending, what I like about the canvas paper is the alcohol sits on top for a while, and even after it's dried you can still lift the colour if you really need to. In the same breath, I would say it can sometimes be annoying if you're stopping and starting, which happened to me about 3 times throughout this, where I'd come back to it and I'd try and blend a colour back into there to add a bit more pink to his skin or other things, and it would become really irritating because I'd start lifting colour and then I'd have to start the process of blending that skin tone from darks to lights again. But it's still not the worst, and I think the benefit of being able to lift colour if you apply too much dark on the area that you're working on is a much bigger pro than the con of it removing when you don't want it to. So I would recommend doing it on canvas paper. I don't see many people doing it, and yeah, I think it's quite fun and it's versatile. I think it's quite a great paper really to work on. Yes, so I can't really think of much else to say at this moment, other than it's just me blending until I was happy with the tones that were happening. And yeah, so I'll pitch in a moment when something is happening that I need to speak about. One thing I did struggle with was the lips. I have many reds, many oranges, many pinks, and every single time I struggle to get the same skin tone as lips. So I have to add a lot of colours on top of each other, and then also take colours off to kind of leave a hint of that colour, if you know what I mean. Just because it's kind of really difficult for me to do lips, and I've never been really good with lips in any of my pieces. But yeah, I think they turned out okay. I don't think they look bad, but they're not where I'd like them to be anyway. Sorry if you hear any echoing in the background. We live close to a park and they seem to be having an event at the moment. One thing I will say is caught myself saying "where's the roast beef" a few times through this. I don't know how many people will get that, but You might see the camera skip a couple of parts of me doing the face. Sometimes I can't hear the camera turn off, and so I don't know when it's turned off, and for a little bit it might not be recording, so I do apologise for that. Also, in the top of your head, in the top of the head of Count Olaf, you can see a very dark patch. That's actually not supposed to be, that's an imperfection in the canvas paper, unfortunately. So here I'm using my Posca paint pens just to create the highlights, and you'll see, if you've watched any of my other marker videos, you'll see that I use this quite often. I overlay it on the marker where I need highlights, and then once it's dry, well, especially on places like where the light's hitting them on the skin, I dab it in with my finger, and it actually creates the perfect kind of look of light hitting a shiny skin. And then, like I say, once it dries, I can go over it with a colour, and it will keep the highlight but also colour it, so I can make it look like a certain colour. And then also, if I don't let it dry, I can also smudge that colour and create more of a highlight in an area. So it's a really good tip, especially on canvas paper. I'm not sure how that would work on other papers, but on canvas paper it's really good, and it allows me to do hair quite often very well. Yes, so that's what I did, and obviously the highlights on the eyes to make them look more glazed and glossy. For the tie, I used some more warm greys and just layered up to create the shadowing, and then the lapels, if they even are lapels, I can't really tell, of the jacket that he's wearing, I used cooler greys mixed with some greens, so it's kind of got a bluey green touch to it, and I think it missed that part of the recording, but with the green as well, I can't remember what green I used, I overlaid just the right side of the face very slightly, just to create the look that the background is shining onto his face, to create kind of like a green highlight. I just did a kind of rough kind of look to his top, just because I kind of wanted the focus more to be on his head rather than a very intricate top, so his top's not the greatest. I would say I always find that during these pieces, the first thing I do, I always have a lot of enthusiasm for, and then the longer I'm going on these, which, because they take a long time to do these because of the sheer amount of blending I have to do, and the longer it takes me to do one, the less enthusiasm I have, and so the things I tend to do last don't tend to be as good looking as the start. That's why when you watch my Mad Hatter, Johnny Depp's Mad Hatter piece that I did, his hat looks amazing because I spent ages doing all the fabric, and then the further and the longer it took me to do the rest of his portrait, the kind of sloppier it became, to me anyway. And that's why I tend to do the face first, because I put the most effort into that, and then the rest I don't need to put as much, well, I do need to put as much effort in, but I don't need to make look as good because it's not the feature of the portrait. I struggled with his little beard thing, because as you can see I left room to kind of do it, and then I ended up actually having a bit too much dark areas to it, and so I had to really go in with my Posca fine pen, do little curls and things, and then try and go over it to make it look more like a fuzzy little beard sort of thing. So there's a few things that I would probably do differently next time, but all in all I'm very happy with it, and I think the last bit I do, which is the hair, I think went really well, and I'll speak about that in a moment when it comes up. On the right there you can see a little bit of excess canvas paper, which I tend to kind of remove any colour off markers. So if I'm using a light colour and I've gone over something dark, it obviously picks up some of that dark colour because of the nature of the canvas paper, and so I sometimes just have to clean it off a little bit. That's why I always leave a little bit of excess canvas there. Again, another thing that's kind of difficult with this is because of the little grainy parts of the canvas paper, you have to apply a lot of ink to try and fill them in, otherwise you have little white specks, and also when you shine it up to the light comes through those white specks and it doesn't look as spectacular in all lights, so sometimes you've got to be really aware of that. For his hair here, I did a kind of a base colour of a few different colours. So basically I think I used a cool grey 1 first, and then I went over with my warm grey, I think it was 3 or 5, might have been 3, to just add a darker layer. I don't know why I did the cool grey first, but anyway. And then I started adding the darker shades with my warm grey 9. I started kind of doing little wispy bits at the back of his head, and then remembered I have a Promarker with a fine tip on, which I used to kind of finish off doing the wispy parts along the edges of his hair, and that worked quite well. And then I filled in with more warm grey 9 for the main part of his hair, which worked really well, and I really enjoyed doing the wispy part. It was quite rewarding afterwards. Another thing that was kind of difficult was blending the dark part of his face, so the shading on the left side, into the dark hair, because like I was saying earlier, when you try and shade it, you're lifting off colour sometimes, and so it was really difficult to shade that colour in there, but in the end it worked out fine. And then again, to create the highlights that you can see on the reference photo in the left, I used my Posca pen, my fine one, did some wispy lines to represent the hair area, then went over with a warm grey 3 or 1 just to kind of tint that white colour. So you can see here I'm putting that white on and it's very stark, and every time I do this I always think when I'm watching the video over, people must think, what on earth has she just done? But then you see that I blend it out with a colour, I tint it and I smudge it into the dark parts of his hair to look a bit more natural. And then again I add another layer on top of that to create even lighter, so you can see it kind of creates the illusion that there's different layers of that light hair. So you've got the dark stuff in the background which is shadowed, and then you have the lighter stuff which is slowly highlighted the closer to the foreground you're getting. And that's how I did this, and then I just chopped off the excess, gave it a sign, and that's it. And I'll show you a little bit of a close-up in a moment once I've finished dilly-dallying and chopping off. So thank you very much for watching, and yeah, please give me a comment if you really enjoy this video, because I'd love to do more of these, but I'm not really sure how big, you know, of a want there is for this type of video, whether this is more light over some of my other stuff. So please give me a comment and a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you do want to see more, and I'm sure there'll be more coming. So thank you very much for watching. Please give it a share as well if you think anyone else might like this type of video, especially if they like a series of unfortunate events like I do, because it's the greatest film. So please give a film a watch as well if you haven't seen the film. Yeah, so thanks very much for watching again. I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye. Yeah, that's all I can say about that. It allowed me to create some really, really nice lines for his hair, which was really handy. And then I used my black Derwent